Imagine being the boss of a huge hotel only to have someone at the front desk not recognize you. That's exactly what happens when the black CEO tries to book a room in his own hotel. Let's see what happens when the receptionist makes a huge mistake. Have you ever made a mistake at work? Well, there's one funny story where a big boss at a hotel found himself in a crazy situation. He decided to book a room in his own hotel, but guess what? The person at the front desk didn't know who he was. This simple mistake turned into something huge, and it's a story full of surprises. The CEO walked into the hotel with a big smile on his face. He was dressed in a sharp suit, looking very professional. His shoes clicked on the shiny floor as he walked through the doors. The lobby was busy with people coming and going, but he didn't mind. He had been to his hotel many times, but today was a little different. Today, he was going to book a room just like any other guest. He looked around and saw the tall glass windows, letting in the bright sunlight. The lobby had soft chairs and tables where guests could relax. The front desk was busy with a few people checking in. The CEO was used to seeing guests at the desk, but today he felt excited. It was always a good day when you owned a hotel. As he walked toward the front desk, the receptionist, a young woman, was busy helping a family with their check-in. She didn't notice the CEO walking up behind her. He smiled even more and stood quietly, waiting for her to finish with the family. He didn't want to rush her. After all, she was doing her job. The receptionist finally looked up from the computer screen, noticing the CEO standing there. She smiled politely, thinking he was just another guest. "Hello, how can I help you today?" she asked cheerfully. The CEO smiled back, but he didn't say anything right away. He wanted to see how she would handle the situation. He stood there, waiting for her to realize who he was. She had no idea that the man standing in front of her was the very person who owned the hotel. "Hi," the CEO said. "I'd like to book a room, please." The receptionist nodded and typed quickly on the computer. "Of course, I'll just need your name and ID, and I'll get everything ready for you." The CEO leaned slightly over the desk, watching as she typed. He wondered if she would recognize him. He had visited the hotel many times before, but today he wasn't wearing his usual clothes. He wanted to see how well the receptionist knew the hotel's guests. "Can you give me your name?" she asked, looking up at him again. "I'd like to keep it simple," the CEO replied, his smile still on his face. He gave her a name, one that sounded normal, like any guest might say. It wasn't his real name, of course, but it was just enough to get things moving. The receptionist nodded again, typing the name into the system. She didn't know who he was, but she did her job quickly and without question. The CEO couldn't help but chuckle to himself. It was funny to be treated like just another guest, when, in reality, he owned the whole place. As the receptionist worked, the CEO stood patiently, thinking about how interesting it was to see things from a guest's point of view. He had spent so many years running the hotel, making decisions, and making sure everything was perfect. But now he was just another person waiting for a room key. He glanced around the lobby again, thinking about how proud he was of what he had built. His hotel was beautiful, with fancy furniture and decorations that made it feel special. He had worked hard to get where he was, and it felt nice to be in the hotel, even if it was just for a short visit. The receptionist finished typing and looked up at him with a smile. "Your room is ready, sir," she said, handing him a key card. The CEO took the key, but before he left he gave her a friendly smile. He was about to leave, but he decided to wait a little longer. He was curious to see what would happen next. With that, the CEO stepped away from the front desk, heading toward the elevator. He couldn't help but think about how he would always remember this moment. It wasn't often that he got to experience his hotel like this, just as a regular guest. It made him appreciate everything a little more. As he walked toward the elevator, he could already picture the receptionist realizing her mistake. It would be a fun moment when she finally realized she had just checked in the CEO of her own hotel. The receptionist watched as the CEO walked away toward the elevator, her fingers still resting on the keyboard. She was busy, so she didn't think much about the man who had just checked in. He seemed polite and normal, like any other guest who stayed at the hotel. She had helped hundreds of guests before, and it was just another day at work. But something about the name he gave her felt odd. It didn't match the name she had seen on the list of VIP guests for the day. She quickly glanced at the computer screen again, thinking she must have missed something. The name he provided was simple, but it didn't ring any bells. She started typing it in again, trying to double-check. Maybe it's a common name, she muttered to herself, not really thinking anything more about it. She focused on the screen, trying to make sure everything was done correctly. The system showed no results for the name he gave, which made her pause for a moment. She quickly tried typing in a few different variations of the name, hoping the computer would find something. Still nothing came up. The receptionist furrowed her brow, feeling a little confused. Why wasn't the system showing any information? She had worked at the hotel for a few months now and was familiar with how everything worked. She knew how to check in guests, add their names to the system, and handle any issues that came up. But this was strange. She looked around the lobby again, wondering if perhaps the guest had just been visiting and wasn't actually staying. But that didn't seem right. He looked like he was ready to stay the night. Still, the computer wasn't showing any booking for the name he had given her. She glanced back at the screen one more time. There it was, an error message. "No reservation found," it read. "Oh no," she thought, biting her lip. "Maybe I made a mistake. I'll try checking the list again." The receptionist opened another window on her computer and started scrolling through the hotel's guest list. She was looking for any sign of the name the CEO had given her, but nothing showed up. Her mind raced. Had she missed something? Was this a special booking? Had someone else made the reservation for him? She paused and thought for a moment. Maybe he had booked under a different name, one she wasn't familiar with. After all, many of the hotel's guests were regulars and often made reservations under names that weren't their real ones, but she still couldn't find anything that matched. With a sigh, the receptionist decided to move forward. She knew she had to do something quickly. She didn't want to keep the CEO waiting for too long. She quickly gave the man the benefit of the doubt and booked him into a room that was available, even though the system didn't show any prior booking for him. She handed him a key card, smiling politely as she did so. "Your room is ready," she said, trying to sound confident, though inside she felt unsure. She watched as the CEO smiled and took the key card, heading toward the elevator. As he left, she couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. She still didn't understand why the system hadn't shown anything about him. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe he had just forgotten to mention that his reservation wasn't in the system yet. But the confusion stayed with her. Little did she know the man she had just checked in was actually the CEO of the hotel. If she had only recognized him or noticed the way he smiled, she would have realized her mistake right away. But instead, she treated him just like any other guest, not knowing that the man walking toward the elevator was the very person who owned the hotel she worked at. As the CEO stepped into the elevator, the receptionist continued typing away at her desk, unaware that her simple mistake would soon lead to a big surprise. The CEO stood quietly by the desk, watching the receptionist as she typed away at the computer. She was still focused on the screen, her brow furrowed in concentration. She hadn't looked up much since handing him the key, and the CEO began to wonder if she was feeling uncertain about something. He could tell that she was having some trouble with the booking. He knew the system well, having helped design it, but he didn't want to jump in and tell her how to do her job. Instead, he remained calm, standing there with his arms folded neatly, waiting. He wasn't in any rush. Today, he was a guest, just like anyone else, and he planned to enjoy the experience. The receptionist tapped the keyboard again, her fingers moving faster now, trying different things to get the room booked for the CEO. She looked at the screen with a little bit of confusion, clicking buttons here and there. The CEO could tell that she was trying hard to fix something, but she seemed to be getting more and more flustered. "Let me check again," she muttered, her voice quiet but a little anxious. She quickly opened another window on the computer and started searching through more data. "Maybe I missed something." The CEO didn't mind. He wasn't in a hurry. In fact, he found it a little amusing. He had seen staff members deal with the booking system before, but he had never been on the other side of it. Watching her struggle like this made him smile. He had built this hotel from the ground up, and now here he was, experiencing the day-to-day operations from a completely new angle. As the receptionist continued to type, she grew more worried. She paused for a second, unsure of what to do next. She looked at him, her eyes a little wide, almost as if she was hoping he would say something to help. But the CEO just stood there, his face calm and friendly. "Everything okay?" he asked, his tone gentle but casual. "Oh yes, just a little problem with the system," she replied quickly, though her voice was tinged with worry. "I'll get it sorted in just a minute." The CEO nodded, still not revealing his identity. He could tell that she didn't want to admit she was having trouble, and he appreciated her effort. He could have told her who he was right away, but where would the fun be in that? Instead, he decided to let the situation play out. He could always step in later if needed. The receptionist looked at the screen again and sighed. "I'm so sorry, sir. I'm having some trouble finding your reservation in the system. I'll try to book you into a room right now." The CEO gave her a reassuring smile. "Take your time. There's no rush. I just need a room for the night." She smiled back, feeling a little better, and quickly started typing in his information once more. This time, she carefully checked the name he had given her. Still nothing came up. After a few more seconds, she frowned. She clicked a few more buttons, then typed in the name again, this time changing the spelling slightly. "I don't understand," she muttered, shaking her head. "Why isn't this working?" The CEO noticed her growing frustration, but he remained calm. He had been through much tougher situations in business, and this was nothing compared to the pressure of running the hotel. He was content to watch her solve the problem in her own way. Finally, the receptionist sighed again. "You know what? Let's just get you checked into a room manually." She clicked a few more buttons and added him to the system as a new guest, not realizing the simple mistake she had made. She handed him a key card with a warm smile. "Your room is ready, sir. I'm really sorry for the trouble." The CEO took the card, his smile still in place. He knew she was just trying her best, and that's what mattered most. "Thank you," he said. "I appreciate your help." As he walked away, the receptionist returned to her work, still unsure of what had just happened. She was relieved that the CEO was happy with the room, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. The CEO, however, wasn't bothered. He simply enjoyed the moment of being treated like any other guest. As he headed for the elevator, he looked back at the receptionist, wondering how long it would take her to figure out her mistake. The CEO stepped into the elevator, keycard in hand, and pressed the button for the top floor. As the doors closed, he glanced back at the lobby, still feeling a little amused by the interaction. He had seen firsthand the kind of work his staff put in every day, and though the receptionist had made a simple mistake, she had handled it professionally. As he stood in the elevator, the doors dinged, and he arrived at his floor. He walked down the hallway to his room, still smiling at how calmly he had navigated the situation. He had known from the start that the receptionist hadn't recognized him, but the experience was a good reminder of how important it was to stay humble and patient with people. Meanwhile, back at the front desk, the receptionist sat in her chair staring at her computer screen. She had processed a few more check-ins and was moving on to other tasks. But the incident with the CEO kept lingering in the back of her mind. Something about it still felt off, and she couldn't quite figure out why. Her curiosity got the best of her, and she pulled up the hotel's guest list for the day. She began scrolling through the names, double-checking everything. She glanced at the VIP section, where the names of important guests were usually listed. And that's when she saw it. There, at the very top of the list, was a name she had missed earlier. It was the CEO's name. She froze. The room felt suddenly very quiet, and her heart skipped a beat. She quickly looked back at the check-in log for the day. The name the CEO had given her was indeed a match. Her stomach dropped as the realization hit her like a ton of bricks. The man she had just checked in, the man she had treated like any other guest, was none other than the CEO of the hotel. Her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. She had checked in the very person who owned the hotel, and she hadn't even recognized him. She had handed him a room key without realizing who he was. The thought made her feel both foolish and mortified. What if he had noticed her mistake? Just then the phone rang, and she jumped in her seat. She answered it quickly, trying to shake off the panic. "Front desk, how can I help you?" she asked, her voice shaking slightly. It was one of the hotel's managers calling about the CEO's arrival. "Hello, this is Mark from management. Just wanted to check in with you about Mr. Thompson's reservation. Did everything go smoothly with his check-in?" Her face turned even redder. "Mr. Thompson?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Yes, he's the CEO. He should be staying with us for the night," Mark said, unaware of the receptionist's shock. "Did he check in without any issues?" The receptionist's mind was racing. Yes, everything's fine. There were no issues," she said quickly, still in disbelief. She wanted to hang up right away, but she didn't want to appear too nervous. "Thank you," she added, before quickly ending the call. She stared at the phone for a moment, still processing what had just happened. It was the CEO, the same man she had just given a key to, without even realizing who he was. Meanwhile, the CEO, now in his room, was lying back on the bed, still amused by how things had played out. He had been curious to see how the receptionist would handle the situation, and now he was waiting for her to realize the truth. It wasn't often that he got to experience the hotel from this perspective, and he knew it would be a funny story to share later. He smiled to himself, imagining the moment of realization that was probably happening right now at the front desk. He could already picture the receptionist's face turning red, and it made him laugh quietly. Downstairs, the receptionist sat in stunned silence. The realization had hit her like a wave. She quickly grabbed the phone again and called her manager back. "Hello, Mark," she said, her voice still shaking. "I need to tell you something." "Is everything okay?" Mark asked, sensing the change in her tone. I just realized something. The man I checked in earlier, he's the CEO, the real CEO," she said, her words tumbling out in a rush. Mark let out a small laugh. "Oh, wow, I'm sure he had a good laugh about that." "I can't believe I didn't recognize him," the receptionist said, feeling embarrassed. "What should I do?" Mark was kind and understanding. "Don't worry about it too much. It happens. Just make sure to treat every guest with respect, whether they're the CEO or just visiting. He'll probably find it funny." The receptionist hung up the phone and sat back in her chair, thinking about the awkward mistake. She could already imagine the CEO's reaction when he found out she had no idea who he was. She hoped he wasn't upset. Back in his room, the CEO chuckled softly to himself as he imagined how the receptionist was reacting. He was pleased with how the situation had unfolded. It had been a small mistake, but it reminded him of how important it was to be kind to everyone, no matter who they were. The receptionist, meanwhile, felt a mix of embarrassment and relief. She couldn't believe she had checked in the CEO of the hotel without recognizing him, but at least she hadn't made a big scene. She learned an important lesson that day. No matter how busy or stressful things were, it was always important to stay calm, treat everyone equally, and never assume anything about a guest. As the night went on, the CEO's laughter echoed in his room, while the receptionist took a deep breath and continued with her work. She had learned something valuable from this funny, but slightly awkward mistake. As the night went on, the hotel continued to bustle with activity, but the receptionist couldn't stop thinking about the day's events. She had made a simple mistake, one that felt big at the time, but it wasn't the mistake that mattered. It was the lesson she would carry with her moving forward. She had treated the CEO just like any other guest, which, in a way, was a good thing. She had been polite and professional, doing her job to the best of her ability, even though she didn't know who he was. But now, looking back, she realized that there was more to this lesson than just booking a room. The truth was, everyone deserved to be treated with. The CEO from his room had already made his own conclusions. He was proud of how the hotel ran, and he knew that his staff worked hard. He had spent years building this hotel, and he understood that mistakes happened. What mattered was how people learned from those mistakes. The receptionist had handled the situation well, and he was pleased that she had treated him with respect, even though she didn't know who he was. To him, it was a reminder that respect and kindness were the most important parts of any job. The receptionist continued working, but she kept the lesson in her heart. Every guest, no matter their status, was important. She would never make the same mistake again, but even if she did, she knew she would continue to do her best to make everyone feel welcome. After all, a hotel was more than just a place to stay. It was a home away from home, where everyone deserved to be treated with care. And as for the CEO, he would remember this day too, not because of the mistake, but because of how the hotel staff had treated him as just another guest. It reminded him that no matter how high up you are, the best way to lead is by treating everyone with respect and fairness. In the end, the lesson was simple: treat everyone with respect, no matter who they are, because you never know when someone might be more than just a guest.